and pretty much for the WNBA. They're scrambling to get more money to get this CBA media deal to get over the hump. Caitlin Clark viewership numbers is a complete disaster compared to all of the past seasons with her playing in the league. And quite frankly, this might be one of the least viewed openers Caitlin Clark has ever seen since playing collegiate or professional. I mean, it is very, very bad.
In sports, stats can expose the truth, but sometimes they hide the bigger story. Now the Indiana Fever are facing serious questions after reports claim viewership dropped by over 500,000 during the matchup against the Los Angeles Sparks. And suddenly, head coach Stephanie White is being pulled straight into the controversy as fans start losing confidence faster than anyone expected. But here's where things get dangerous. Is this really about coaching decisions? Is the media finally shifting its attention elsewhere? Or is there something happening behind the scenes that nobody wants to admit yet? Because when fan interest starts slipping this fast, it usually points to a much bigger problem brewing underneath the surface. The Fever were supposed to be the hottest story in basketball. Instead, the conversation is starting to change, and not in a good way. Critics are questioning the rotations, the energy, the chemistry, and whether the team is already struggling to handle the pressure that came with massive expectations. And now every game feels less like entertainment, and more like a test of whether this team can keep the spotlight from fading away. Some fans are calling this overreaction. Others believe it is the first real warning sign that the hype machine may finally be cooling off. But one thing is undeniable. People are watching the numbers closely now, and if this trend continues, the noise around Indiana is only going to get louder. The real question is whether the Fever can silence the doubts before this turns into a full-blown crisis.
Fever win 87-78. That was a good game. I am old and I should be asleep by now. That was a late game. But I liked it. And before anything, I'm just going to say that I liked Caitlin's game. I mean, obviously she went 1 for 7 for her 3-pointers, but she didn't give up. She kept shooting them until she got it. Obviously, I'm okay with that game because she was still scoring 24 points and fast as hell under the basket and just getting...
If you walked into this game expecting a simple win and move on type of night, the Indiana Fever just reminded everyone that basketball conversations do not work like that anymore. Because in today's game, even a comfortable win can somehow leave behind more questions than answers. On paper, the result looked clean. The Fever handled business, the scoreboard backed them up, and the headlines should have been easy. But the reaction online told a completely different story. Fans were not celebrating the win nearly as much as they were dissecting the energy, the rotations, the chemistry, and the feeling that something still looked off beneath the surface. That is what makes this situation so fascinating. Years ago, a victory ended the discussion. Now, a win can actually create even more debate. And with Indiana carrying one of the biggest spotlights in basketball, every possession, every substitution, and every awkward moment instantly turns into fuel for another viral conversation. The scary part for the Fever is that expectations have become so massive that simply winning is no longer enough. People want dominance. They want chemistry. They want proof that this team can truly handle the pressure that comes with being the center of the basketball world. And until that happens consistently, every game, even the wins, will continue to feel strangely unsettled.
By impact, Caitlin Clark is a face. By viewership, Caitlin Clark is a face. By moving the needle, Caitlin Clark is a face. By putting butts in seats, Caitlin Clark is a face. By selling tickets, Caitlin Clark is a face. However, it is fair to say that you're disappointed in the lack of growth Caitlin Clark has made on the basketball court. It is fair to say that Caitlin Clark is still a three-point shooter who hasn't grown as far as having a mid-range game. It is fair to say that Caitlin Clark's game is still not as efficient as you would want Caitlin Clark's game to be when we've seen a younger Paige Beckers by a WNBA experience come into the league and be a better player, if not more efficient scorer.
Look, the Indiana Fever walked away with the win, and honestly, that should have been the only story dominating the headlines. Especially when the league's biggest superstar dropped another electric 24-point performance, reminding everyone exactly why every game she plays suddenly feels bigger than basketball itself. Because at this point, it is no longer just about stats. Every arena she steps into turns into a full-scale event. Ticket prices explode, cameras follow every move, social media lights up non-stop, and the energy inside the building feels more like a playoff atmosphere than a regular season night. Very few athletes in sports can shift attention that fast, but somehow she keeps doing it over and over again. And yet, even after the win, the conversation still did not feel completely settled. Instead of everyone simply celebrating the performance, fans immediately started debating what the game supposedly revealed about the team, the coaching, and whether Indiana is actually living up to the hype surrounding them. That is the reality of carrying this much attention. When expectations become this massive, even a strong win and a huge scoring night are no longer enough to silence the noise completely.
About this yesterday with the media rights deal, how I was waiting to see what the numbers was going to look like when they was coming out, because I'd see my numbers. I know what my numbers look like. I told y'all yesterday, I'm down 2 to 3 million views a month covering this league. Now, everybody else views ain't that low, but that's none of my business. Now, something I will say is that the men lie, women lie. The numbers, unfortunately, just do not lie. Now, in the case of a season where the Indiana Fever is trying to find their way to making it to that next level, and that is a WNBA championship, you expect to see skyrocket viewership numbers.
Yet instead of the usual calm post-game celebration, what followed felt more like a silent divide growing across the fan base. It was almost like everyone watched the exact same game, but somehow walked away with completely different opinions about what it actually proved. Some fans saw a convincing win and another superstar performance from the Indiana Fever that confirmed this team is still moving in the right direction. Others looked at the very same night and saw warning signs hiding underneath the final score, questioning the chemistry, the flow, and whether Indiana is truly as dominant as the hype keeps claiming. And that is where things started getting uncomfortable. Because when a team keeps winning but the conversations around them still feel tense, it usually means the spotlight has grown bigger than the results themselves. Every detail gets magnified. Every awkward stretch becomes a debate. Every coaching decision turns into another argument online. What should have been a straightforward feel-good victory somehow became another chapter in the growing split between fans who believe the Fever are building something special, and fans who think the cracks are already starting to show beneath the surface.
Sparks, folks, it's not just the Indiana Fever feeling the Stephanie White effect. It's not just the Indiana Fever dealing with the repercussions of lack of ticket sales. You think all these other venues don't salivate at Caitlin Clark coming to town? You think Los Angeles isn't, Caitlin Clark's coming, we can open up the top row. State Farm Arena, Atlanta, Caitlin Clark's coming, we can open the top row. Las Vegas Aces, not only can we move to the T-Mobile Center, we can open the top row. Well, if teams start not opening up the top row when Caitlin Clark's coming to town, those owners can't be too happy.
That tension exploded even more once the conversation moved away from the court and onto the television numbers. Reports of viewership dropping by nearly 500,000 compared to a previous matchup against the Los Angeles Sparks started spreading online, and almost instantly the entire discussion around the Indiana Fever changed direction. Because in a league currently experiencing one of the biggest growth surges in its history, numbers like that do not get ignored. Especially not when Indiana has been at the center of the WNBA's rise in mainstream attention, sold-out arenas, non-stop media coverage, and national conversations. The drop itself became bigger than a statistic. To fans, it felt like a message, and that is where things became uncomfortable. People were no longer debating just one game. They started questioning the entire product being put on the floor. Fans began asking whether the basketball itself is matching the level of hype surrounding the team, or whether frustration is slowly starting to creep into the viewing experience. A huge part of that criticism has focused on how the offense is being built around the team's biggest superstar and most dangerous scorer. Supporters believe the system should constantly put pressure on defenses early by creating fast movement, aggressive spacing, and immediate scoring advantages. Instead, there have been long stretches where possessions feel slow, predictable, and strangely disconnected. The spacing sometimes looks frozen. Screens arrive a second too late. Ball movement circles around the perimeter without truly attacking the defense. And instead of forcing chaos onto opponents immediately, the offense can drift into stagnant sequences that kill momentum before it ever fully builds. That is why this debate suddenly feels so much bigger than ratings. Fans are connecting the drop in interest directly to the style of basketball they are watching. Fair or not, many people believe audiences respond emotionally to energy, pace, and star freedom more than anything else. And when those elements feel restrained, the reaction online becomes brutal very quickly. Now the pressure surrounding Indiana is no longer just about winning games. It is about whether the team can create the kind of explosive, fast, emotionally gripping basketball that made people fall in love with this movement in the first place.
One player in the WNBA that can draw this much attention. So when we are critiquing Stephanie White, it's because she has a gem on her hands, and I don't want her to ruin it. We don't want her to ruin this. Caitlin Clark makes the kick out to Sophie Cunningham. An insane pass.
That is where the frustration really starts to grow. Because when a superstar commands the level of attention she does, fans begin viewing every single possession like it should be maximized with near-perfect precision. Every trip down the floor feels important. Every missed opportunity feels amplified. And once expectations reach that level, people stop focusing only on how many points are scored and start obsessing over how those points are actually being created. That is exactly why the recent 24-point performance from the Indiana Fever did not quiet the noise the way many expected it would. If anything, it pushed the debate into an even bigger spotlight. Because while some fans saw another dominant showing from the team's biggest star, others came away believing the production happened more through individual talent than through a system that consistently puts her in the best possible position to control games. And that perception is what has slowly dragged head coach Stephanie White directly into the center of the conversation. Not because of one bad timeout or one questionable play call, but because of a growing feeling among parts of the fan base that the offensive identity still looks unfinished at a time when expectations for sharpness and efficiency are sky high. Some supporters defend the structure, arguing the offense looks disciplined, controlled, and built for long-term balance. Others see the exact same system and believe it feels too restrictive for a player whose presence alone bends defenses the second she crosses half court. To them, the offense sometimes appears organized, but not fully designed around the unique gravity and chaos their superstar naturally creates. And that is where the divide becomes impossible to ignore. One side sees patience, development, and gradual adjustment. The other side sees an elite offensive weapon not being unleashed to its full potential. That split in perception is why every Fever game suddenly feels bigger than the final score itself. Fans are no longer just judging wins and losses. They are judging whether the team's identity truly matches the level of talent, hype, and national attention surrounding it.
The ratings are in for the Paige Becker's Caitlin Clark showdown from Saturday. And I'm going to be real. In my opinion, they're low. They're low. Now, you got to keep in mind something, and this is massive. Nielsen changed its methodology last year, okay? And when they changed the methodology, the way they calculated ratings for television, we talked about this in past when I made ratings videos. Ratings across all of sports went up by about 10%. Jacked up about 10%.
And right in the middle of that growing divide sits the audience itself, which has already started sending signals that people are now tracking almost as closely as the games on the court. Because the conversation is no longer living only in post-game debates or social media arguments. It is starting to show up in attention numbers, viewership trends, and the way fans are choosing to engage with the Indiana Fever from night to night. That is why the reported drop of roughly 500,000 viewers compared to a previous matchup against the Los Angeles Sparks exploded into such a massive talking point so quickly. The number itself became a symbol. Fans instantly attached their frustrations, theories, and expectations to it, treating it less like a broadcast statistic and more like proof that momentum may be shifting in real time. And in modern sports culture, perception moves almost faster than reality. Once ratings conversations begin, they stop being just about scheduling windows or competing broadcasts. They become emotional indicators. People start interpreting them as signs of excitement, disappointment, confidence, boredom, trust, or concern surrounding a team's direction. What makes this situation even more complicated is that Indiana has also been responsible for some of the biggest WNBA television audiences seen in years. Multiple Fever games have pulled in massive national audiences, with certain matchups reportedly climbing into the multi-million viewer range and turning the franchise into the center of the league's visibility explosion. Those numbers have constantly been used as evidence that Indiana is the biggest draw in women's basketball right now. But ironically, those historic highs may have created a different kind of pressure. Once audiences see games reaching numbers around the 2.5 million mark, expectations immediately change. Suddenly, every nationally televised matchup is expected to feel like a cultural event capable of repeating the same audience surge over and over again. The problem is that sports audiences rarely behave that consistently across an entire season. Attention naturally rises and falls depending on matchups, narratives, timing, controversy, and momentum. But when a team becomes this heavily connected to ratings conversations, every dip starts feeling dramatic, even when the broader picture still points toward enormous growth overall. That is why the Fever are now sitting in such a strange position. They remain one of the biggest attractions the league has ever seen, yet at the same time, every fluctuation in audience attention is now being dissected like evidence in a larger debate about hype, coaching, entertainment value, and whether the team is fully delivering on the phenomenon it helped create.